The Sony Alpha ZV-E10 II. Obviously, this is a refresh of the previous version that was pretty popular. They have the 26 megapixel BSI sensor in here, which is from the FX30 and the A6700 cameras. They're taking that, putting it in something a little bit cheaper, which is nice to see. The MSRP is $1,000 without a lens, and they did update the 16 to 50, the original right here, right now. And it's fine for what I do at the very least. It's okay. It's nothing special. It does zoom. This is the A6000. Obviously, autofocus on Sony cameras is pretty good. In this case, you do get likely a benefit compared to the previous version of this camera, but there is apparently one chip, an AI chip or something, that is not in this camera, but it is in the A6700 in practice. What that means, I'm not sure. They do have quite a few firmware features in this camera that is on some of their other ones, but in this case, they have background defocus, one-touch operation, to get the background as blurry as possible. It changes the settings of the camera. As a product showcase, it's an easy way to feature products in quick videos. In my case, that would be so many cases. That would be good because it's quick and easy way to not have it always focused on your face all the time. It also has a focus breathing compensation feature, but that depends on lenses. Only specific lenses work with that feature. They also have that clear image zoom feature. There is one quirk related to that. At least I saw Jason Vong's video where he doesn't like the toggle dial thing on the front of the camera because that's linked with the clear image zoom, and he accidentally changes the framing of the camera and doesn't realize it. So that's a mix of good and bad. Probably one of the more interesting things on the ZV-E10 Mark II or version 2. You have general UVC and UIC connection support. So when you hook it up to a computer, no drivers are needed. It's just going to work. A very simple way to get a webcam on your computer. I did notice in one of the videos I watched that where a person had access to the camera, they were overheating at 4K using USB on the camera. So don't expect 4K to work as a webcam, but 1080p should be just fine. Also has RTMP, RTMPS, SRT, IP-based streaming support on the camera, so you can directly push frames from the camera to a server. It does have HEVC, H.265 encoding support. You're going to get more efficient files compared to H.264. That's very nice. In my case, I do a ton of video work, and having smaller video files, even at a little quality reduction potentially, is nice because it's difficult to save all this stuff and expensive. But this camera has a ton of options. I don't want to go into detail of every video feature and function and what resolutions and stuff like that. You can find that information in the spec page or various other videos where the people had it available to test. In my case, you can get 4K 60 with a slight 1.1x crop. 4K 30 doesn't have the crop, but there are some downsides, which I'll get to when I start talking about downsides. The 4K is scaled down from a 5.6K image. Again, you'll get higher quality. Let's talk about ergonomics a little bit. You can see that the grip is wider. It has the larger battery in here. Very nice benefit for the camera compared to the previous version, so you should get longer run times. Obviously, that reflects in the size of the grip, which I think is actually a good thing. And the strap lugs, it uses simple loops. I like this type of strap lug much more than the ones that have the dangly triangles that make noise. I really wish most camera companies would just do simple strap lugs like this. So good on you, Sony, for putting it in here. It's a fully articulating screen, very functional, good for doing self-filming. Has a little toggle dial on the top for photo, video, and slow motion stuff. Large record button for video. On the bottom of the camera, you can see that the tripod connection, the quarter 20, is in a good position. It should not be an issue removing the battery if you have a quick release plate on the camera, and it's not super far forward like some cameras have. This camera has the same interesting microphone setup compared to the previous version, so if you do vlogging and such, this is probably going to be one of your best options because you can use that wind muff. You've got the microphone in, you have the headphone out. Here you can see the multi-interface shoe, full functionality without having to use extra cables or cords. The camera has a single SD card slot up to UHS 2. Not ideal. One is better than none, I guess. Yeah, you know, SD cards are easy to come by. Let's start with some of the quirks on the camera. Rolling shutter performance is certainly improved over the previous version of the camera, but it's not amazing. If you were to compare this to a more expensive, more advanced sensor that is available on something like the Nikon Z8, which is a full frame sensor, and you look at the maximum flash sync speeds, this doesn't have mechanical shutter. By the way, this is 1/30th of a second maximum for the flash sync, and then 1/200th of a second for that type of camera. On Petapixel, they had a nice graphic showing the rolling shutter performance on this camera. Overall, you're gonna have to spend a lot more money to get better performance with that type of thing. Basically the FX3. Jared Undone also has tests in his original video and the FX30 video if you want to see actual rolling shutter numbers. As I mentioned before, it has no mechanical shutter, so for photography situations you could potentially have banding in the photos. You're going to have to spend a lot more to get the FX30, which basically has the same sensor, but you get the 2 card slots, you get IBIS. Oh, and this camera does not have internal stabilization on the sensor. Honestly, the worst choice that Sony made on this camera, in my opinion. It seems marketed towards vloggers and people that want to move around and do stuff with the camera, hold it vertically, whatever. It does have digital stabilization, but those have crops, so that means you'll need wider lenses. Camera companies aren't releasing as many optically stabilized lenses as they used to make. So right now I'm looking at stabilized lenses in the E-mount. To give an example, you've got the original kit lens for this camera, which I wouldn't pay that price. This is the new version of the lens here. Again, the lens that I'm using for this stream. I mean, it's on the cheaper end, and if you buy it in the kit with the camera, it's going to be $100, so I'd say buy it with the camera if you have any interest in that lens. 51.8 OSS, so if you want a little bit of range with a larger aperture, that could be a consideration for this new camera. 28 to 70 is generally okay, but considering it's an APS-C censored camera, 28 millimeters on the wide end isn't going to be amazing, but the price is okay. Tamron has an 18 to 200. Again, it does not have the IBIS, and it has digital stabilization, so when you digitally stabilize video, it's going to crop in on the image. It's not going to be amazing, but this one does have optical stabilization. 17 to 70, that could be a nice option, but then it's almost the price of the camera. 16 to 70, and then the price keeps going up and up. I think this would be a pretty nice option, but it's f4. So there are a fair amount of optically stabilized lenses still in E-mount, and you could consider used stuff. Not a bad camera, but I think I would wait until it drops in price and such to really consider it, unless you need a camera right now. The main negative, at least for me, is I think it's very vlog focused. It's very run and gun type of moving around with the camera, filming yourself, filming people. And in that case, it'll work out okay, but without the sensor-based stabilization, you're going to have some negatives, especially compared to like the FX30 and other cameras that do have sensor-based stabilization. You do have quite a few options with lenses, as we saw, but it would have been better with that feature. So that's too bad, but it is what it is. If you enjoyed the video, Scott Photography Bonsai, thanks.